Hey guys, and in this video, let me tell you everything that you need to know about slow motion videos with your GoPro. So slow motion videos are all about making it look epic. You want to focus on maybe a romantic aspect, or maybe you want to make it more cinematic. It simply looks awesome when you slow it down. So slow motion videos are all about frame rates. What is a frame rate? Well, let's treat it as a single photo. So let's say there is a 24 frames per second. It means that within a single second, your camera, in this case GoPro, gonna take 24 photos within a single second. So for example, you can shoot your video in 60 frames per second or maybe 120 frames per second. And what it means that within one single second, your camera gonna take like 60 photos or maybe 120 photos. A lot of material to work with while editing your video. So this way you can simply stretch it, but you cannot stretch something that's already short, like a 24 frames per second video. Now let's take a look at a 24 frames per second video at a normal speed. Okay, so that was at a normal speed, and now watch the same video when I slow it down. It's quite choppy, isn't it? It's all because there is simply not enough material to work with. There are not enough frames. I try to slow it down, but my whole video project is 24 frames per second. And I simply don't have enough photo frames to work with. And that's the whole reason. You have to plan ahead when you're recording your videos. You have to simply choose what kind of shot gonna be recorded in higher frame rates, thus slow motion, and which ones are not gonna be. And now, let's watch the same video that's been recorded in 60 frames per second. As you see, this video in 60 frames per second starts to look better, because there is simply enough material to work with to stretch it. And now, let's take a look at another video that's been recorded in 120 frames per second. And then let's compare it. Both of these videos were slowed down to exactly the same speed, 24 frames per second. So one of these videos was recorded in 60 frames per second and another in 120 frames per second. And as you guys could notice, the video that had double the amount of frames was simply 2 times longer than the previous one. And now let's have a look at another example. And in this case, it's gonna be 120 and 240 frames per second, and see what's the difference between them. The video on the right had almost double the amount of the frames per second. This way I could simply stretch it even further. So it all comes down to what kind of activity you are trying to record. For example, when there's gonna be a lot of action involved, then by all means I would suggest you go with 120 frames, maybe 240 frames per second, because it's gonna look epic. You're gonna slow it down because it's already happening very fast, and you want to slow it down so the viewer can have a better experience of seeing everything, because he could simply miss it. But on the other hand, when you're recording something that's already slow, for example, like maybe your wife is walking on the beach and there is not much action involved, you can always record it in 4K 60, because this way it's not gonna be too slow and the quality of your video is still gonna be good because you're gonna use that 4K video. And now let me show you a couple of examples of how and when I used my GoPro to record a slow motion video. So as you see, guys, I haven't recorded anything in 240 frames per second because there was simply no need for it. I simply wanted to have a better resolution, and what I was recording didn't require 240 frames because it wasn't fast enough. Alright, and now let's focus on the resolution and frame rates. So what you need to know about it is that the higher resolution that you have, it's the better quality for your video. But you cannot have like a 4K and 240 frames per second. Your camera is simply not capable of recording like 120 or 240 frames in a 4K file. And that's the reason that you have to lower down your resolution. So it all comes down with a cost because you lower down the quality of your video. So for example, when you are using 1080p in 240 frames per second, it's not gonna look as good, as crisp and as sharp as a 4K file. And lastly, let's come back to the frames per second. Do you remember when I told you that a frame per second should be treated like a single photo per second? Now, what do you think gonna happen when you record 240 frames within a single second? Do you know? Your camera simply can struggle to record it because there may be not enough light. So if you want to use a high frame rate, then you need a ton of light to do it. So if there's gonna be like a cloudy day or maybe evening or maybe you're recording something at night, then I would not advise you to record anything in slow motion because there's simply maybe not enough of light to enter every single frame. So it's basically best if you're recording in a slow motion during a very bright sunny day when there is a ton of light coming from the sky, and this way your camera gonna simply have enough light to fill up every single frame. Alright guys, for today's video that's it. Hopefully you learned something. I put a lot of effort into making it as simple as possible, and if you have some questions about it, then don't hesitate. Leave some questions in the comment sections below, and as I said, for today's video that's it. And guys, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, leave me a positive feedback, maybe a thumb up, that would be nice, and see you guys in the next one.